Welcome to Confluence Conversations, the podcast where we explore impactful topics sharing education, communities, and student success. I'm your host, Haley Bruick, and I'm excited to bring you another insightful discussion today. Our goal with this podcast is to engage in meaningful conversations with experts, educators, and changemakers who are working to make a difference. Through these discussions, we aim to inform, inspire, and provide valuable resources for students, parents, and educators alike. Today, we are diving into a topic that directly impacts student success, STLCC's TRIO program. For many students, the road to higher education is filled with obstacles, whether it's financial barriers, academic challenges, or lack of guidance and resources. That's where TRIO comes in. This federally funded program has been designed to provide critical support for students from disadvantaged backgrounds, helping them stay on track, succeed in college, and achieve their educational goals. TRIO isn't just about academics. It's about mentorship, financial literacy, career development, and building a strong foundation for lifelong success. So today, we'll explore what this program offers, why it's so important, and how it has transformed the lives of countless students. To help us understand the power of TRIO and the impact it has on students, I'm honored to welcome our guest, Laura Moderson, manager of TRIO of St. Louis Community College. Laura has been deeply involved in student success initiatives and has worked extensively with TRIO to ensure students have the support they need to thrive in higher education. She brings with us a wealth of knowledge and firsthand experience in guiding students through the challenges of college life. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we dive into TRIO's impact, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in education, and your role with the TRIO program at STLCC?
Yeah, definitely. I am a St. Louis native. I'm a product of public schools in St. Louis County, so always been a big believer in public education. When I got out of undergrad, I decided I wanted to teach. So I went back and got a master's in education. I spent 6 years in the K-12 classroom in Tennessee and Oklahoma. And then about 7 years ago, I transitioned into working in higher education outreach and college access. And that brought me to TRIO. So the TRIO program at St. Louis Community College, we actually have 5 different TRIO programs within STLCC. So my program is TRIO Talent Search. We work with middle and high school students here at Confluence Academies. We also have TRIO Upward Bound, which specifically serves high school students. They're here at Confluence Preparatory Academy and then also in St. Louis Public Schools. And then we have 3 programs that serve current college students at STLCC. But we all have the shared goal of helping address those systemic barriers that students face when it comes to graduating high school, getting into college, paying for college, and then graduating from college. So Talent Search specifically, as I mentioned, we start in 6th grade. And I think of us kind of as the Come As You Are program of the TRIO programs. We can serve up to 500 students a year. There are no academic requirements. Any GPA is great. That's a starting point. Let's keep moving. Any career goals, any academic goals, we can work with that student and help that goal become a reality, help them make a plan. So we are in the Confluence secondary schools 4 days a week. We have staff on site in the schools working with the students, working with parents. We also provide virtual resources and support. We do field trips, career visits, college visits, cultural experiences, summer programming, kind of trying to address as many of the areas as we can that might support our students in achieving post-secondary plans.
That sounds like pretty extensive. What challenges or obstacles does that all bring?
As any educator knows, or any parent or anyone who's ever met a young person, right? You don't know what you don't know. So, yes. So what's great about Talent Search is we start in 6th grade. What is challenging about that is a 6th grader's concept of future planning is not maybe where I, as an elder millennial, would like their concept of future planning to be. So one obstacle that we run into is when we're thinking about being prepared for higher education, it's a really multifaceted thing. It's a scientific term, where we have to think about a systemic awareness of how to navigate college. We have to think about what college and career opportunities exist. We have to think about academic preparedness. We have to think about the social and emotional ability to function in a college classroom and on a college campus. If you don't start thinking about any of that until senior year, you have a steep uphill battle. So we do a lot of work with our middle schoolers and trying to connect with our early high schoolers to make sure that we have time to dive into those topics. So in terms of for our program, what are obstacles we face is convincing students to invest in something that's a really long-term investment. You're not going to get the gratification today. Maybe 6 to 10 years from now, you're going to get the reward from this. But right now, I'm going to try and convince you to keep working for a long time to achieve this goal. In terms of barriers for students, I think I talked to my team about the obstacles to higher education for underrepresented students as falling into a couple of different categories. So if you have always gone to, for instance, an urban public school, that's what school looks like to you. To take a student who has had one type of school experience and say to them, college can look any way you like. That's true, but it's not a super helpful piece of advice, because if I can only picture school one way, or maybe like what I've seen in movies, which is also not super realistic, I'm not picturing the actual variety of a trade school versus a community college versus a tiny liberal arts college where everyone leans into their quirkiness and that's the charm of the campus versus an urban research institution. So we try to make sure that our students get the chance to physically visit both 2-year and 4-year, public and private colleges and universities, so that they can get a sense of what experience they want, so that they can start deciding what do I want my life to look like in college and beyond. So an awareness of what the options are is one obstacle that a lot of our students face. Another barrier that we see with students is academic preparedness. And that's not just an issue here in the TRIO program. That's an issue nationwide. We're hearing people have that conversation. But at STLCC, and when I talk to my colleagues at other institutions, especially English skills and math skills are barrier courses for students coming into post-secondary education, especially in these years following the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we know. I mean, you're a teacher, so you know it had a huge impact.
I think that and the advent of social media, technology, focus.
Yes. And I think also with social media, with technology, with the ease of spreading messaging, we are getting a lot of students that are coming to us telling us, I saw this TikTok about how you don't have to go to college because you can do XYZ. Obviously, you don't have to go to college, right? If you had to do it, it would be mandatory. It would not be an optional thing. You can have a great life without going to college. But the research tells us that for students who are coming out of first-generation families, for students who are coming from low-income zip codes, getting a college degree is a deciding factor in accruing generational wealth, in breaking those generational patterns, in having flexibility of benefits, retirement, paid time off. So, yes, it is true that there are people who don't pursue post-secondary education, who have these great lives. But students are seeing the rock stars of that experience on social media, rather than seeing that for a lot of people who don't continue their education after high school, life is a series of challenges. Right. And you know what? I'm not as convincing as an influencer, right? So I'm trying to tell students yeah, this life is beautiful. And I also really like this person's house. And I'm telling you, that's not the average experience. you should go to college. You should go to 2-year or 4-year college and get some sort of a degree so that you have options and so that you have a more realistic chance of the adulthood that you're envisioning.
Right. And I think going to college visits or on college visits, coming in, getting guest speakers and things like that are ways that you're helping the student understand that.
Yes. And we also try, my team and I, especially when we plan field trips or college visits, I always laugh because when I was a teacher, I was the one who was like very jealous of my classroom time, right? I was like, no, you don't need to go on that. You need to be in English class. You need to be reading. And now I'm like, hey, teachers, let us take your kids. But we are really focused on what does it look like when experts in these fields do this work? So for instance, in a journalism class, right, you are trying to give your students as authentic an experience as you can. But there's no substitute for going to the news station and seeing what that energy feels like. So for instance, this month we took students to Webster University here in St. Louis County, and we spotlighted their exercise sports science program. And so our students, middle school students from South City Academy, were standing there with college students doing functional movement assessments, doing physical fitness assessments, which was very humbling for me when they were like, Laura, you can do it, come try it. They were actually up on the physical therapy tables and the students were showing them, this is how we learn to do this. And it was great to see some of our TRIO scholars start to appreciate, when they're telling me like, you can go to college and study this, that's not 2 or 4 more years of sitting at a desk taking notes. That's 2 or 4 more years of hands-on experience with what I want to do, especially because we know, due to a variety of factors, most of which probably come down to budget, science labs, for instance. Our students are not getting to be hands-on in a lab setting every single day. So when we go on a lab tour, we're not just looking at it. We're pulling on knee-high waders and walking into a creek bed or a wetland and taking soil samples and water samples. We're looking at really gross little invertebrates under a microscope and analyzing what lives around us in our community, because I never know what's going to light a fire in a kid.
Right. And those TRIO programs are critical because you can expand their knowledge. I mean, here we're in a school, we're a Confluence Preparatory Academy. We've got our little podcast students, our students produce the little newsletter, and that is out of a chair. I think a lot of our students think, well, I don't want to continue education because this is boring and I don't, this isn't me.
Right.
When you're able to take them and see, here's what you can do in college and here's what you can be. And on that note, do you have a specific success story that
Yeah,
like to share?
so the challenge of my job, right, is I live half in our world of like real data where I could tell you like 57% of our graduates from last year are enrolled in post-secondary education. That's a huge success story for St. Louis City, right? Like that data point is a huge success. But when I think about our success stories, I'm thinking about last summer we took about 25 students on a canoe trip down the Mississippi, which was the sweatiest and most disgusting I have ever been at work, and also the best day. It was so fun because at the beginning, a lot of our students were like, I don't know how to swim. We had one girl who looked at me as we loaded the canoes into the river and said, wait, we're going to be on a boat? And I was like, what did you think a canoe trip was when you signed up for today? But by the end of it, the students were like making up chants to keep their rhythm with rowing. They were getting in the river, floating down, getting out onto the little island, walking up, floating back down. They were talking about how soothing it is to feel the water move. And so within that one day, we got to actually watch students get out of their comfort zone, actually watch students be really brave. Like if you don't know how to swim and you're willing to get into the Mississippi River of all bodies of water and be able to immerse yourself in that. And we even had some students who were going up to our guides and saying, like, how old do you have to be to work here? What do I need to do to learn how to do this job? Now, is it possible that those students went home and never thought about it again? Sure. But it's also entirely possible that one or two of those 20 whatever kids are, the next time they're sitting in science class and it doesn't feel engaging, they might remember, hey, if I learn how to do this, one day I can spend my whole day out on the river. Or we were really lucky to partner with the Cardinals Community Foundation. So last summer we went to a Cardinals game. But prior to the game, we got it's not backstage, a behind the scenes tour of Busch Stadium from their college interns. And then we went to a panel on careers in sports for non-athletes. And so do we potentially have a student who loves sports, that's their passion, but they're not going to go into the major leagues, they're not going to go into the NBA, but now they can look at this panel of folks in St. Louis, in their hometown, who look like them, who talk like them, who get to spend their whole day in a professional sports facility doing that work, and who told them, hey, you got to go to college, you got to learn how to do this. And then, afterwards, we talked to our students about what you just did. That was networking. You met people in this industry. If this is the industry you want to go into, then when the time comes, you send over an email where you say, hey, I met you. You did this panel. Do you have any advice? We never know what's going to light that fire. But those are the success stories I think of, are when I see our students really engaging with the community of St. Louis, with the art scene, the music scene, the scientific research that's going on, the history. We took students to the Griot Museum last week, and they engaged with Black history here in St. Louis in a way that I know every classroom teacher wants their students to have those experiences, but that's not necessarily how our school system is set up, right?
You get to see the light bulb moments, right? The aha moments, or I really like this. Here's my interest, because within a classroom, you can't always see that. So you guys, partnership with Trio. Trio has partnerships with the community and organizations, which make this possible.
Yes. And we also have a lot of flexibility because Trio Talent Search is not, for instance, a STEM specific program. We're not specifically, a humanities specific program. We are open to anything. So we had a teacher at one of our middle schools who came to us and said, I have a ton of students interested in cars. Great. Well, I sit at a desk that happens to be above the auto body shop at STLCC, so I can take the elevator down and bother some professors, and we can bring your students to STLCC. So we had students from STLCC Academy again who were like taking apart a transmission, which I think it was a transmission. I clearly never took automotive. But we have had teachers at some of our other schools. We have had a teacher at Old North, the science teacher there, who said to us, my students are really interested in nature. They're really interested in spending time outside and the value of that, which is tough to achieve in North St. Louis. And great, let's get your kids signed up for Trio Talent Search. Let's plan a trip for your students to the National Great Rivers Research and Education Center, and let's have them spend the day immersed in nature and science, and with professionals in that field who will show them what it looks like. So that's probably my favorite thing about Talent Search, is because we can cast such a wide net. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, I have this idea, I really want to take my students on a field trip, or I really want my students to hear this type of a guest speaker. We have brought in medical students from SLU School of Medicine. We have brought in admissions staff from WashU School of Law who have spoken to classes, who have shared their experiences. We have that flexibility. What's great about our partnership with Confluence is that y'all are really boots on the ground, right? You're frontline. You know what are our students struggling with and what do our students need. And so the more that our Confluence partners tell us, hey, here's an area where we think our students could really benefit.
You can make it happen.
Right. You help us bring the students and we'll help you bring in the partners and provide that support however we can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What would you, we have a lot of listeners, probably everything from school administrators to teachers to students and parents. What message would you like to leave with everyone that they should know about TRIO, the program, or how to get involved?
So TRIO in general is a nationwide program out of the Department of Education. So there are hundreds of TRIO programs across the country. So first, know that if your student joins TRIO Talent Search through STLCC or TRIO Upward Bound through STLCC, you are now part of that larger TRIO network that has produced, Senator Raphael Warnock is a TRIO alumni, Viola Davis is a TRIO alumni. Really, you're joining a really amazing community that has a lot of success. On the more local level, the best thing that someone can do, I feel like, to support their student, especially when it comes to parents, guardians, encourage them to really engage with the TRIO program. Because just like the school day, you're going to get out of it what you put in, which is very good advice for students going to college as well, right? The more that students participate, the better they get to know the TRIO staff, the better we can get to know them, the more support we are able to provide. So it is possible to be a TRIO Talent Search participant, and maybe you check in a couple times a year, you ask a couple questions, you get the support you need. But for our students who really get to have these transformational educational experiences, those are the students and the families that are really engaging with the program and taking advantage of what we can offer. I can provide all the support in the world that I think will be valuable, but the more we hear from our students, from their parents and guardians, from their teachers, from their counselors, the more we can really tailor our program to the remarkable students here at Confluence and make it successful for them in a way that may be different from what a TRIO program looks like in Georgia or Idaho or even, Springfield. So that's our goal, is to continue refining how we're supporting these students to get the results that the students want, that the teachers want, that the parents want, and make sure that as many students as possible get to have those experiences. And the continued support that we get from the teachers, from the counselors, from the parents who are encouraging their students to engage with us is really what makes that possible.
Well, that's awesome. I think we covered just about anything, but is there anything else that you can think of that?
Anyone who would like to learn more about TRIO, as I said, it is a nationwide program through the Department of Education. So you could Google TRIO programs, you would find a lot of information. But you could also check out our website, which is stlcc.edu/TRIO. You can also find our application link there. We are accepting applications. So if you're in 6 through 12.
We can post that information into the podcast, I'm pretty sure, in the podcast.
Yes, that would be great.
Bottom of the page.
And we are always looking for more partners and opportunities. So if anyone listening is not affiliated with the school system and thought, oh, I have an idea, we could show off XYZ at my workplace or spotlight this, please reach out to us. We love finding new opportunities to show our students what options exist in the future.
Laura, thank you very much for joining us. It was very educational. And for all of you listening, be sure to check out the show notes where you can find the links to Laura's information and TRIO and where you can sign up and how you can help. And be sure wherever you get your podcast to check out Confluence Conversations and check out also our social media platforms. And thank you for listening.